burst onto the post-war scene, it turned the automotive world upside down. The shape of a Beetle is as recognizable as a Coca-Cola bottle. It's a classic, not because it's rare or expensive, but because it had such an impact. Today, Volkswagen is one of the largest companies in the world. Its factories and dealerships span the globe. It produces a startling array of vehicles. Its lineup of Volkswagens is just one part of a global automotive giant. It owns Audi in Germany, Bentley in the UK, Lamborghini in Italy, and the revived Bugatti in France. No one could have imagined that Volkswagen would assemble this amazingly diverse range of brands when it started out. The company began taking shape in Germany during the 1930s. It was a turbulent time, but the strength of the German automobile makers was astounding, especially on the racetrack. The German subsidiaries of General Motors and Ford sold more cars in Germany than any other company. But the two German concerns, Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union, dominated Grand Prix racing. One man had helped both teams with the design and engineering of their cars, Ferdinand Porsche. Porsche was an engineer of remarkable abilities. His skills didn't escape the notice of Germany's Chancellor, Adolf Hitler. In 1933, he asked Porsche to design a people's car, or Volkswagen, for Germany. Porsche accepted, and he started work on what was to be an important and historic project. He admired Henry Ford and knew the impact the Model T had had on the United States. As he developed his new car, he visited Detroit and studied the Ford plants. It was quite a contrast to Germany. While companies like BMW were building small cars such as the Dixie, Germany had never had an inexpensive mass-produced car that was the equivalent to the Model T. Germans like Carl Benz and Gottlieb Daimler are credited with inventing the automobile, but they built cars mainly for the rich. Their grand luxury autos and super-fast sporty touring machines were not affordable everyday cars. Porsche was responsible for some of their advanced designs. He was now charged with creating Germany's Model T. He needed to design a car that cost no more than a medium-priced motorcycle and was very fuel efficient. He'd laid the groundwork in 1932 while building 3 small prototype autos for the German motorcycle manufacturer NSU. He revisited his design after receiving the new commission. 3 more prototypes were built. He called these the Type 60s. Porsche was still searching for the right engine for these simple, lightweight, aerodynamic cars. He knew they should be rear-mounted for better traction and air-cooled to prevent freezing in the winter, particularly desirable in Germany. By February of 1936, Porsche had prepared 3 more prototypes. They had the basic 4-cylinder engine that went on to power over 20 million Volkswagens. The cars were taken out for a 30,000-mile test run over the Alps and down the new autobahns. By December 1st, they'd passed their test. But there was more work to do before production began. In 1938, the new factory was under construction in a town that Hitler christened with the Orwellian-sounding name Strength Through Joy, or KDF-Stadt. He also called the cars the KDF-Wagens. Everyone else would call them the Beetles or the Bugs. As the factory was going up, Porsche turned his attention to creating a sporty car, the Type 64. Using many Volkswagen components, he laid the foundation for what would later become the car the world associates with his name, the Porsche. His dreams for a racy sports car and the future of the Volkswagen were put on hold when Hitler marshaled his armies and invaded Poland in September of 1939. There was no way to fill the thousands of orders for the Volkswagen. The few that had been built went to Nazi party officials. The rest of the country would have to wait until after the war. Germany was in shambles when the war ended in 1945. Its industrial base was a bombed-out hulk. The Volkswagen factory was no exception. The British military authority needed transportation, and a young major, Ivan Hurst, decided he'd try to revive the Volkswagen production facility. Out of the rubble, he created a viable, working factory. With an initial order from the British Army for 20,000 cars, he was off and running. By October of 1946, 10,000 Volkswagens had rolled off the line. It was soon evident that this would be a viable concern. The British found a real manager for Volkswagen, Heinrich Nordhoff, but also recognized that VW needed economic help. The Ford Motor Company was given the opportunity to buy Volkswagen. Henry Ford II, the grandson of the man that Porsche admired, is reported to have said, "I don't think what we're being offered here is worth a damn." Instead, Ford decided to focus on rebuilding its own German brand, the Taunus. It's interesting to speculate about what would have happened if Ford had taken over VW.
Já voltamos com Carros, uma paixão, na Management TV. Você está assistindo Carros, uma paixão, na Management TV.
Nordhoff realized there were challenges. He said, "The Beetle has as many faults as a dog has fleas." But as Germany's economy recovered, there was a growing appetite for cars. The Volkswagen, new or used, was a good value for people shopping for basic transportation. The rapid post-war transformation of the country was being hailed as the German economic miracle. Volkswagen was leading the way. By 1948, VW's low price and high quality was setting it apart. Nordhoff, like Henry Ford, decreed that he would build only one car model. He would do it well and make only the design and engineering changes that were necessary. Nordhoff rejected the idea of the annual new model change. These were entrenched in the United States, where flashy new and often bigger cars were always thought to be better. The changes were usually cosmetic. There wasn't much new under the metallic skin of the cars coming out every fall. Detroit was selling the sizzle rather than the steak. Nordhoff concentrated on making evolutionary changes that added value to the cars. He said he didn't want to be driven around by a bunch of hysterical stylists trying to sell people something they really didn't want. He made small changes as he went along. In 1949, the carburetor and dashboard were redesigned. Hydraulic brakes replaced mechanical ones. Vent windows were added, and a larger one-piece replaced the original split rear window. A synchronized transmission made the car easier to drive. a larger engine gave it more pep. Nordhoff ignored those urging him to sacrifice quality in order to build as many cars as possible. He was willing to lose sales to maintain his car's reputation. This firm's strategy seemed to work. People bought his Spartan, rugged cars. By 1953, 500,000 Volkswagens had rolled off the line. This was no longer a local phenomenon. The cars were being exported to 86 countries. One country slow to catch Beatlemania was the United States. Nordhoff was determined to break into the world's largest car market. Only a minuscule number of VWs had been sold in the US. The small British sports car, the MG, was a leading import. This fun roadster was mechanically temperamental, but it had a certain charm. The hottest foreign car at the time was the Jaguar. Sales to the US kept the British factory running on double shifts. Even then, customers had to wait 4 to 6 months for delivery. Affluent sports car fans in the US wanted to get their hands on the new German car they'd heard about, the Porsche. Using the Porsche as bait, Nordhoff made a deal with a New York importer, guaranteeing him access to the sports cars if he'd also agree to sell VWs. This started the pipeline flowing. The original dealer never pushed the cars properly, but others saw the opportunity and they started selling. Nordhoff launched a charm offensive and hit the American talk show circuit.
That funny pug nose there. It's a Volkswagen. That car is the symbol of the most phenomenal development in world economy since World War II. What are you going to put in all that space?
Well, we are going to manufacture our car in this country.
Are we in competition with you now on, for example, the Volkswagen?
As we see it, the American market leaves so much room for a small, well-proven economic car that we wouldn't hurt anybody's feeling.
Humorous ad campaigns also helped to turn the VW's differences from American cars into virtues.
Ever wish you didn't have radiator problems? Ever wish you didn't have a radiator? Ever wish you could sail through mud or snow? Ever wish your car didn't guzzle so much gas? The Volkswagen has no radiator problems. In fact, no radiator. The Volkswagen engine is cooled by air. Can't freeze in winter or boil over in summer. The Volkswagen engine's in the rear. You go in mud or snow. The Volkswagen cuts most gas bills in half. Ever wish you owned a Volkswagen?
Their light-hearted approach also diluted aversion to buying cars from a recent enemy. By 1955, there were more than 20,000 Beetles on the roads of America. Owners' clubs were forming, and it was on its way to attaining cult status. It had reverse snob appeal. Intellectuals on both coasts thought the VW demonstrated their disdain for crass commercial culture. Volkswagen was a mass-market car in Europe. By 1955, 1 million Beetles had left the Wolfsburg assembly line. Production averaged more than 1,000 cars a day. VW had become the largest automobile manufacturer in Europe. Nordhoff had made an exception to his one-model-only policy in 1950 when he introduced the Transporter. This versatile van gave workers a means to haul just about anything. It was even replacing the St. Bernard on the slopes. It was a hit around the world. VW vans were extremely popular with penny-pinching surfers in Southern California and with the Love Generation hippies in San Francisco. Camper versions enabled families to take the campsite with them on the road. It was a great way to take in the sights and not bust a budget. More new models were on the way. Volkswagen introduced a sporty car, the Karmann-Ghia. Some called it the poor man's Porsche. In 1961, Volkswagen introduced the 1500. This was its first new four-seat passenger car. It had a more contemporary look than the Beetle, but didn't have the charm. Other successors to the throne were trotted out. After Volkswagen purchased Audi, it could share cars between the two divisions. This was first tried in 1973 with the Audi-derived Passat. Once again, a Beetle replacement failed initially to catch on. While Volkswagen searched for a new star, others were finding new uses for the Beetle. Two Southern California subcultures, surfing and cars, converged to create the dune buggy, the most famous of which was built by Bruce Myers, the Myers Manx. The Manxes were built using glass fiber bodies, the same material these hot rodding surfers used on their surfboards and catamarans. They lifted the standard VW body off and plopped a new low-slung tub on top. The little engines provided plenty of power for these lightweight cars. Their good mileage meant there was more money left for buying beer and other essentials. Porsche's rear-engine philosophy gave the buggies more traction than a conventional auto. It helped them go off-road to discover inaccessible surfing spots in Mexico. Being part hot rodder, Myers and his other dune buggy buddies started to race. Their good-natured dares and challenges spawned a sport, off-road racing. By 1967, the Baja 1000 was an annual event attracting thousands of spectators and cars. The dune buggy begat the Baja Bug, and the sport kept growing. Today, over 200 cars with drivers from nearly every state and more than 10 countries compete annually in this rugged off-road race. It's no longer confined to just Volkswagens, but there's still a large contingency of Baja Bugs that show up and race every year. It's a tradition. By the end of the 1970s, Volkswagen had decided that the Golf could succeed the Beetle. On January 19, 1978, the last Beetle built in Germany left the factory. But the Beetle was still being produced elsewhere, including its plant outside of Mexico City that was turning out over 40,000 classic bugs a year. Advertising helped to make the VW a beloved part of the culture. These Spartan Beetles became the Model T of Mexico. It was the police car, taxi, delivery van, ambulance and family car. Its 82 miles per hour top speed came from an engine that looked a lot like Porsche's original design. In 2003, Volkswagen decided that it was finally time to say goodbye to this venerable icon. The last 3,000 cars were prepared as a special farewell edition in colors like Aquarius blue. On July 30th, 2003, the last Beetle came off the line. It was a bittersweet farewell. More than 21.5 million had been built over a long, long life. It bested its nearest rival, the Model T, by over 6 million vehicles. Flowers and mariachis saluted the last bug as it rolled off into automotive history. This modern factory would be awarded the job of building the 5th generation Golf for export to the United States. But it would be hard to replace the emotional connection that they had with the Beetle. Volkswagen had recognized the nostalgic pull the Beetle had on people and introduced a so-called retro future version in 1998.
What's this cloud's name?
That's the Beetle.
Beetle?
Its body was reminiscent of the original, but it was built on a Golf chassis. The new Beetle was a modern car, yet it satisfied an emotional longing for simpler times. It appealed to young-at-heart buyers who didn't mind standing out in a crowd, people with a sense of fun. It had a lot more luxury and performance than the original Beetle, but there was no mistaking its heritage. A new Beetle convertible hit the road in 2003. Volkswagen had first built a convertible in 1949. This introduced open-top driving to many people. The new car was a far cry from its earlier cousin. It was lower, had a glass back window, and the top could be raised and lowered in 13 seconds with the push of a button. Its 115 and 150 horsepower engines, coupled with 6-speed automatic transmissions, were a lot more powerful than 4 of the original engines combined. It's clear that Volkswagen isn't a company that's stuck in the past. It has its eye on the road to the future. The Beetle's off-roading history may be a part of that future. Inspired by the Myers Manx and the Baja Bugs, Volkswagen created the Dune. This concept car, with an open-air roof, sails over the sand. This Beetle could take you past the road's end. For those who couldn't wait for an off-road Beetle, VW had an SUV with an optional V8, the Touareg. This combination off-road vehicle and luxury sedan was designed to compete against Land Rover, Lexus, and other high-end SUVs. Another indication of how far the company has come from its low-cost people's car roots. Its off-roading abilities took the Touareg to the Paris-Dakar Rally and earned it the Motor Trend 2004 Sport Utility Vehicle of the Year award. VW has come a long way since Ferdinand Porsche struggled to build a car for the people. It literally was the engine that got Germany going after the war. It gave the counterculture of America a car they could love. It captured the hearts and minds of the world with irony and humor. These are cars that still bring a smile to anybody who sees one. The original Beetle may be history, but it's left its mark on the world.
Veja a seguir.